Hey guys, welcome back to more malicious compliance stories. Imagine getting fired during your honeymoon while your boss steals the business that you built from scratch. He thought I was a nobody and dared me to fight back, thinking I would lose. He thought wrong, and what I did next obliterated him. And the first malicious compliance story is titled, Boss Fired Me During Honeymoon Vacation, I Own the Trademark. So I'm a welder and fabricator in Indonesia, and this is a story of how my boss tried to steal my brand during my honeymoon and how I made him regret every single second of that decision. Before I get into the meat of this, I need to give you some background. So I've been welding since I was 16, my father was a welder, his father was a welder, and I grew up in a shop surrounded by the smell of metal and grinding sparks. By the time I was in my early 20s, I was already pretty damn good at what I did. I had a reputation for clean welds, strong joints, and an eye for detail that most guys twice my age could not even match. I started working for this fabrication shop. The owner, let's call him boss, ran a decent operation. They did custom motorcycle parts, mostly aftermarket exhaust systems, crash bars, luggage racks, that kind of thing. The work was solid, but nothing exceptional. Boss was always chasing volume over quality, which drove me nuts, but I needed the job and the pay was okay. About 4 years into working there, I had an idea. I've been seeing a lot of demand for high-end custom parts for motorcycle touring enthusiasts. These guys would spend serious money on their bikes and they wanted parts that were not just functional, but actually beautifully made. I'm talking about parts that looked like pieces of art with perfect welds, flawless powder coating, and designs that were both practical and gorgeous. So I started designing my own line of parts. I did it in my spare time using my own money to prototype everything. I developed a whole process for making these parts. I used better steel, I designed jigs that allowed for more precise welding, I worked with a laser etching guy to create subtle branding, and I found a powder coating shop that could do finishes that actually lasted. The first batch of parts I made I sold through online motorcycle forums. The response was insane, people loved them, they were more expensive than the cheap Chinese knockoffs flooding the market, but riders could see the difference in quality, my welds were perfect. And my parts fit exactly right, they did not rattle, they didn't crack, and they didn't rust after one rainy season. Word spread fast in the motorcycle community, and within 6 months I had more orders than I could handle in my spare time. That's when boss approached me with a proposal. He wanted to manufacture my parts in his shop, he would provide the space, the equipment, the materials, and handle the business side of things. In exchange, he would take a percentage of the profits. And I would get a salary increase, and I would keep the rights to my designs and my brand name. So here's the critical part, by the way. I had already trademarked my brand name. I'm not gonna say what it is here because I don't want to dox myself, but I had legally registered it in my name, not the company's name, and this was intentional. I'd heard too many horror stories of workers getting screwed over by bosses who claimed ownership of their ideas. When boss and I drew up our agreement, it was clear. I owned the trademark and the shop could manufacture parts under my brand name, but only while I worked there and only if the parts met my quality standards. If I left or if the quality dropped, I could revoke permission to use the brand, and we both signed it. His lawyer looked it over, everything was official. For the next 3 years, things went really well. My parts line became the most profitable segment of the shop. We were shipping all over Southeast Asia, and we had even started getting orders from Australia and Japan. I trained 2 other welders to help with production, but I personally inspected every single part before it went out. If a weld was not perfect, we redid it. If the powder coating had even a tiny imperfection, we stripped it and sent it back. My brand's reputation was built on that consistency. My boss was making good money from this, way more than from his regular fabrication work. But he started getting greedy. He would occasionally suggest we could streamline production, use slightly cheaper materials, skip some of the more time-consuming finishing work, and I always shut that down immediately. I told him the whole reason the brand worked was because of the quality, and the second we compromised on that, we would lose everything. He'd usually back off, but I could tell it annoyed him. He thought I was being too precious about it, that customers would not even notice small changes. Well, he was wrong, but he didn't understand the market like I did. Now, fast forward to earlier this year, I got married, my wife and I had been together for 5 years, and we had finally saved enough money to have a proper wedding and a honeymoon. We planned a 2-week trip to Bali, nothing crazy expensive, just a nice break at a decent resort where we could relax and celebrate. I gave my boss months' notice about the honeymoon. I trained the 2 welders I trusted to handle production while I was gone. I created detailed checklists for quality control, and I even pre-approved all the orders that would be worked on during my absence. Everything was set up so the shop could run smoothly without me for 2 weeks. The wedding was beautiful, the honeymoon started off perfect, my wife and I spent our days on the beach, our evenings trying new restaurants, and we were both completely disconnected from work. I didn't check my email, I didn't look at the shop's social media. I was just enjoying being married and being away from the grind, but then on day 9 of the honeymoon, I got a text from one of the welders I had trained, let's call him Welder A, and the message was short. "Boss fired you, he told us this morning. Sorry, man." I thought it was a joke at first. I called Welder A immediately. He answered and confirmed it. Boss had called a meeting that morning and announced that I no longer worked there. He told the staff that he'd decided to take the brand in a new direction and that my perfectionist approach was holding the company back from reaching its full potential. I was stunned. I asked Welder A what that meant practically, and he said Boss had already started making changes. He had switched to a cheaper grade of steel for the parts, and he had told the welders to work faster and not worry so much about making every weld look perfect. Apparently, he had even negotiated a deal with a cheaper powder coating shop to save money. I hung up and immediately called my boss. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, voicemail, and I sent him a text asking what the hell was going on, no response. However, later that day, I received an email from my former boss telling me that I was a burden on the business and that he dared me to try to retaliate because I could not win anyway. Well, at least according to him. For the rest of that day, I was a mess. My wife could tell that something was wrong and I finally told her what happened. She was furious on my behalf, but she also reminded me of something important. I owned the trademark. My boss could not legally sell parts under my brand without my permission, and that night, back in the hotel room, I pulled out my laptop and started going through everything. I checked the shop's website. They were still selling parts under my brand name. I checked the online marketplaces where we had listings. Same thing. And by the way, Ripe Stars, just to quickly interject here, if your boss screwed you over like this, what would you do next? Let me know in the comments. And by the way, if you enjoy these longer malicious compliance stories, then please don't forget to like the video, because it would help tremendously if we could reach 1000 plus likes on the video. Thank you so much for your help. So I looked at social media. My boss had even posted about the exciting new direction the brand was taking, and then I started seeing the customer complaints. Someone had received a crash bar that arrived with a weld that had already cracked. Another person posted photos of a luggage rack with visibly uneven welds and a powder coating that was already chipping. These parts had clearly been rushed out in the week since I'd been gone. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I planned. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer friend back home, someone I'd used before for the trademark registration. I explained the situation. He confirmed what I already knew. My boss had violated our agreement by firing me and continuing to use my brand. I had every legal right to revoke his permission to use the trademark, but here is where I decided to get strategic. I could have just sent my boss a cease and desist letter and threatened to sue him. That would have been the straightforward approach. But I realized I had a better option. I could pull the plug on his entire operation in a way that would cause maximum disruption while staying completely within my legal rights. I spent the next 2 days still on my honeymoon working on my laptop and making phone calls. My wife was incredibly patient with me. She understood this was important. First, I drafted a formal notice revoking my boss's permission to use my trademark effective immediately. My lawyer helped me make sure the language was airtight, and we sent it via mail and registered mail to boss, to the shop's business address, and to my boss's home address too. No way he could claim that he didn't receive it. Then I got to work on the real malicious compliance. See, my boss thought he could just fire me and keep using my brand because he assumed I wouldn't fight back, or that I would just send angry letters that he could ignore. What he didn't count on was me actually exercising my legal rights in the most thorough way possible. I started with the online marketplaces, so we sold parts through major e-commerce platforms in Indonesia and to regional ones that cover Southeast Asia. I contacted each platform's intellectual property department and submitted trademark infringement claims. I provided my trademark registration, copies of the original agreement with my boss, and the revocation notice. I requested that all listings using my brand name be taken down immediately, and within days every single listing was gone. The platforms didn't mess around with trademark disputes, they would rather pull listings than risk legal liability. Next, I contacted the payment processors. The shop used 2 different payment gateways for online orders. I submitted the same trademark documentation and informed them that any transactions related to my brand name were unauthorized. Both processors immediately froze the shop's accounts pending investigation. That meant any customer payments that had not been settled yet were held and the shop could not process new orders. Then I went after the distributors. We had 5 distributors across Indonesia, Malaysia and Thailand who bought parts in bulk and then resold them. I sent each of them a formal letter explaining that the shop no longer had authorization to manufacture or sell parts under my brand, and that any parts they'd received in the past week were produced in violation of my trademark. I offered them 2 options: return the parts for a full refund from me personally, or keep selling them and risk being named in a trademark lawsuit. 4 of the 5 distributors immediately stopped selling the parts and contacted Boss demanding refunds. The 5th tried to stay neutral at first, but when I pointed out that I could publicly name them as selling counterfeit goods, they caved too. I also contacted the suppliers we used, the laser etching company that did the branding on the parts, the powder coating shop, even the steel supplier. I informed them that any work they did for the shop using my brand name was unauthorized. The laser etching guy stopped taking orders immediately. The powder coating shop said they'd only continue if Boss could provide proof that he was licensed to use the brand, but I was not done yet. See, if Boss had just sent me a termination letter and stopped using my brand, this would have been simple. But he fired me and kept using the trademark and was actively damaging its reputation, and he dared me to do something about it, thinking I could not win. So I did. I enforced every single clause and protection I had in the most thorough way possible. There was a major motorcycle trade show coming up in 2 months, and the shop had already paid for a booth and had planned to showcase the parts under my brand name. I contacted the trade show organizers, provided my trademark documentation, and informed them that the shop's planned booth would be infringing on my intellectual property. They agreed to revoke the shop's permission to display anything with my brand name at the show. I even contacted the freight forwarder we use for international shipments. I provided them with the trademark documentation and informed them that any packages containing parts branded with my trademark were unauthorized, and they immediately put holds on all pending shipments and contacted the boss for clarification. I heard through Welder A what was happening at the shop. My boss had completely freaked out when the marketplace listings disappeared. He had called the platform, screaming at customer service reps, threatening to sue, demanding to know what happened, and when they told him it was a trademark claim, he apparently went pale. Then the payment processor freezes hit. The shop had about 2 weeks worth of revenue just sitting in frozen accounts, and my boss could not access it. He tried arguing with the processors, but they wouldn't budge without a resolution to the trademark dispute, and the distributor cancellations came next. Within a week, all 5 distributors had sent back their inventory and demanded refunds. That was a huge chunk of cash Boss had to come up with immediately. The trade show booth cancellation was especially painful because Boss had already invested in custom display materials and had planned to use the show to land new distributor deals. All that money was wasted, but the real killer was the freight forwarder. We had about 30 boxes of parts ready to ship to customers in Malaysia and Australia, and all of them were stuck in warehouse with holds on them. Customers started complaining about delayed shipments, some cancelled their orders and demanded refunds, and then the quality issues started catching up with them too. Remember those customer complaints I'd seen online? Well, they multiplied. More people started posting photos of defective parts, welds cracking, powder coating, peeling, parts that didn't fit properly because Boss had rushed production and skipped quality control steps. One customer's crash bar actually failed while they were riding and the bike went down. The rider was okay, thankfully, but they were furious and threatened to sue. Boss panicked and issued a voluntary recall on all parts manufactured in the past 2 weeks. A recall is expensive as hell though. Boss had to offer refunds or replacements to every customer who had bought parts in that period, more cash flowing out. Meanwhile, the suppliers were not working with him anymore. The laser etching guy refused new orders and the good powder coating shop would not take his calls. He had to scramble to find new suppliers who would work with him, and they charged more because they didn't know him. Within 3 weeks of firing me, Boss's cash flow was completely screwed. Revenue had dried up because he couldn't sell online anymore. He was hemorrhaging money on refunds, recalls, and trying to find new suppliers. The distributors had abandoned him, and the trade show opportunity was gone. I heard from welder A that boss had to lay off half the shop staff because he couldn't make payroll anymore. The 2 welders I trained both quit rather than wait to be laid off. They knew the shop was sinking. Boss then tried to pivot to selling under a different brand name, but here's the thing. My brand had a reputation, customers knew it and trusted it. A new brand from the same shop with a reputation for recently selling defective parts? Nobody was interested. The bank noticed the cash flow problems and tightened the shop's credit line. Boss had been relying on credit to smooth over the lumpy cash flow. That's normal in manufacturing. Without that cushion, he was in serious trouble. About a month after I got back from my honeymoon, boss finally reached out to me. Not directly, of course. He sent his lawyer to contact my lawyer about resolving the trademark dispute. His opening position was that I was being unreasonable and that we should just go back to the way things were. He would rehire me, we would forget this whole mess, and everything would be fine. My response, delivered through my lawyer, was simple: no. I didn't want to work for him anymore. He had fired me during my honeymoon, tried to steal my brand, and nearly destroyed its reputation with his cost-cutting garbage. But I was willing to discuss terms for him to stop using my brand entirely. The negotiation took 2 weeks. My boss was desperate. His business was circling the drain. He had gone from having a profitable operation to being on the verge of bankruptcy. Here's what I demanded and what he eventually agreed to. So first, he had to turn over all the jigs and fixtures I'd designed for making the parts. These were technically tools I'd created for the shop, but they were essential to maintaining quality. I wanted them. And second, he had to provide me with all the CAD files for the parts design. Again, I created these and I wanted them. And third, he had to transfer ownership of all domain names and social media accounts associated with my brand. He had registered these in the shop's name, but they were all built on my brand's reputation. Fourth, he had to sign an agreement never to manufacture, sell, or promote any products that were similar to my brand's product line. I didn't want him trying to create knockoffs. And fifth, he had to pay for my legal fees. In exchange, I agreed not to sue him for trademark infringement or for the damage his substandard parts had done to my brand's reputation. Boss had no choice. He signed everything. Once I had all the jigs, files, and accounts, I moved quickly. I registered a new business in my name only, I rented a small workshop space, and I bought used equipment that was good enough for my needs. Then I reached out to welder A and welder B, the 2 guys I had trained. I offered them jobs with better pay than they'd been making at boss's shop, plus a small profit-sharing arrangement. They both accepted immediately. We started production with a skeleton crew, just the 3 of us. But we went back to the original standards: good steel, perfect welds, proper quality control, every part inspected before it shipped. I sent emails to all the old distributors explaining what had happened and letting them know the brand was back under proper management. 4 of the 5 signed on again immediately, and the 5th came back after they saw the first batch of new parts. I relaunched the online marketplace listings under my new company's name. I posted on social media explaining that there had been a temporary quality issue due to unauthorized manufacturing, but that I was personally back in control of the brand. The response was overwhelming. Customers who'd been burned by the defective parts boss has shipped out were skeptical at first, but when they saw that I was personally guaranteeing every part again, they gave the brand another chance. Within 3 months, I had a waiting list for parts. Demand was higher than I could handle with just 3 people. I hired 2 more welders and trained them up to my standards. The business grew steadily. I wasn't making as much volume as boss's shop had been churning out, but I was making way better margins because customers were willing to pay premium prices for premium quality. Meanwhile, boss's shop completely collapsed. Without the profitable parts line and with his reputation in tatters from the recall and the defective parts scandal, he couldn't sustain the business. He tried to focus on the regular fabrication work, but he had burned bridges with too many people. I heard from former suppliers that boss had stopped paying the bills. The bank called in his credit line. Within months of firing me, he declared bankruptcy. The shop closed, equipment was sold off to pay creditors. Some people might feel bad about that, but I don't. Boss got greedy. He thought he could fire me, steal my brand, cut corners to increase his profits, and get away with it. And he thought I would just roll over and accept it. Today, though, my business is doing better than ever. I've expanded the product line, I've hired more staff, and I'm even starting to explore export markets beyond Southeast Asia. The brand's reputation is stronger than it was before all this happened because customers know I personally stand behind every part. And boss? Well, last I heard, he's working as a supervisor at someone else's fabrication shop. No ownership, no control, just a regular job. I genuinely hope he learned something from this experience, though I doubt it. My wife still teases me about spending half our honeymoon on my laptop, destroying my former boss's business. I remind her that I was protecting our future though. That brand is our livelihood now, and it's growing into something that could support our family for decades. Was I ruthless? Maybe. But boss fired me while I was on my honeymoon and tried to steal something I had built with my own hands and my own reputation. And well, he thought he could get away with it because he had the bigger shop and more resources, but he forgot that I had something more important, which was I had the legal rights, the skills, and the reputation. And when he tried to take those things away from me, I showed him exactly what happens when you mess with someone who knows their worth and is not afraid to fight for it. And now guys, don't turn off the video, the next one is a fantastic revenge story that you don't want to miss. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to not miss any of my daily uploads. So this one is titled, "You yelled at me for not using the compost? Fine, I will chew you out about being a creep in front of your wife." So for context, I, 21 female, live with my mom and stepdad, mid-50s, at my stepdad's parents' place, mid-70s. My parents have lived here for 10 years now, and I used to visit a lot when I was a kid. I've lived here now for about a year after finally leaving my father's place. My stepdad's stepdad, Lee, is an absolute creep though, and he's not subtle about it too. Everyone in the family knows, but I genuinely cannot tell if his wife is oblivious to it or just doesn't care. 10 years ago, he tried getting me to spend time with him in his office by showing me animal videos and trying to get me into the Diablo games. Thanks to my instincts around predatory men, thanks Dad, I did not go into that office again. My stepsisters all experienced him creeping on them too. They've made it clear that he's not invited to their gatherings. He got scammed $30,000 from one of those fake email girlfriends. Who paid it off? His wife, of course. He leaves his phone upright on the kitchen counter and gets Discord notifications from the Fury Hypnosis Discord server he's on. He only speaks to me or looks at me if I'm wearing shorts, makeup or a skirt or if I have a girlfriend over, otherwise complete radio silence. I've had enough of it today. I'm in raging PMS mode right now. I can hardly stand being around my favorite people right now, so being around the people I hate, definitely not easy. I usually try to let this rage out at the gym, so I got in some shorts and on my way out I see this guy staring at me. I was so close to saying something, but I figured I should just let it go, get the adrenaline out, then come home, eat and sleep and done. After I came home, I finished my dinner and was just sitting at the table texting my friend, and he came to the table to monitor his insulin. I left the table. I was not just gonna sit there and watch him, and for some reason that triggered something in him. Maybe he could sense that I was in a bad mood and took that personally. I throw away my scraps in the garbage and he comes up to me, gets in my face and says something along the lines of, "You know food, like edible food? It goes in the compost." He aggressively opens the cabinet under the sink and the compost bin like a raging kid, "There, in there," and stomps away. As he's going away I say, "Has that always been the case?" Bro. I'd been here on and off for 10 years and instead of them saying I need to put food in the compost a single time, he waits for a moment to yell at me about it. He's hard of hearing, so he didn't hear me. Him staring at me earlier than yelling at me was enough though. I went over to the living room where he sat down by his wife and the conversation went like this. Some errors because I cannot remember the exact wording. Me, "Hey, has that always been the case? I'm supposed to only put food in the compost?" Them, "Yeah." Me, "Well, I've been living here for about a year and I've never been told." Wife, "I just didn't know you were doing that." This is a lie. There have been a multitude of times she were doing dishes at the sink next to the trash and I throw my food away. Me, "Well, I've noticed a lot of times I won't find out that I'm doing something wrong until there is this big angry outburst about it. If I'm doing something wrong, you need to tell me about it when I do it." Lee, "Every time I tell you, you take it wrong." This was very confusing, as everything he told me to do, take care of the shared spaces, I've consistently done. He stopped telling me to do these things after I asked him if he washed his hands after peeing. And he didn't. Then he went and made dinner for him and his wife. I wish I was making this up. And this is when I'd shoot him out. Me, "Do you have any examples of me doing that? I've done everything you asked. And actually, if you need something from me, I want, wife, to tell me. You make me extremely uncomfortable. You only ever talk to me when I'm wearing a skirt. You stare at me when I'm wearing shorts and you only talk to me when I have my girlfriends over. And when I was a kid, you tried to get me to spend time with you in your office. Also, you leave your phone out on the kitchen counter." I'm not trying to read what's on there, but you leave your notifications on and what's on there is extremely inappropriate. Then the wife said, I just didn't know you were not using the compost. Lee has a moment where he cannot talk and oh my god, the look of defeat on his face was legendary. His face just went emotionless. He shrunk down so much and got all quiet after yelling and said, how about I ignore you and you ignore me? I gave him a thumbs up and went to my room. Before we end the video, let's read another story from r/petty revenge that you don't want to miss. It is titled, Mom ignored me asking her not to announce my birthday at restaurants. So my brother and I are both the kind of people that don't like to be the center of attention. For our birthdays we would go out for dinner and our mom would tell the servers that it was our birthday, so they would come and do whatever the restaurant's birthday song is. We hated this and we would constantly ask her not to do it. She would smile and laugh and say, okay, and then do it anyway and make some excuse about how she just wanted to celebrate our birthdays. Well, my brother and I got sick of this, so we started telling the servers it was our mom's birthday on random meals. The servers would come out singing happy birthday and mom would look around to see whose birthday it was, only to have them come to her. My brother and I kept this up for months. The final straw for her was when we were out for my dad's dinner and the servers came to her singing happy birthday. My dad thought it was funny and my mom finally agreed to stop. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.